October 11th, 1990, Dave Grohl plays his first ever gig with Nirvana. Former Nirvana drummer Chad Channing had been fired from the band in June of that year, and with an album behind them and more songs in the works, Nirvana really needed a new drummer. In August of 1990, Nirvana hit the road for a short West Coast tour opening for Sonic Youth, with Dale Crover from the Melvins as their temporary drummer. After the tour, Crover had to return to the Melvins, so Nirvana hired Dan Peters as their new drummer and began planning a UK tour. And so now we go to the flip side with Dave Grohl. He had played in two bands, Dane Bramage and Scream. While drumming in Scream, Grohl became a fan of the Melvins and eventually he made friends with the band. And it was Buzz Osborne from the Melvins who took two of his friends, Kurt Cobain and Chris Novoselic, to go see Scream play live at a show in San Francisco. And Kurt and Chris liked what they saw that night. Now, it wasn't long after this that Grohl's band Scream unexpectedly disbanded while on tour.
Our bass player quit, kind of disappeared while we were in Los Angeles, so we were stuck there. And through a mutual friend, I had hooked up with the guys in Nirvana, and they said, yeah, come on up and let's practice or get together and play, because they were about to do a tour of England. And I said, okay, so I went up there, and that was it. So.
The mutual friend Grohl talks about there was Buzz Osborne of the Melvins, and he was responsible for hooking up Dave Grohl with Nirvana. So Kurt had asked Dave to fly up to Seattle to audition for Nirvana. Here, Dave recalls some of those early conversations he and Kurt had.
I had a couple of conversations with Kurt where we just talked about music, and he wanted to know what kind of music I was into, and I listened to everything. I listened to everything from Public Enemy to Neil Young to the Bad Brains, and we actually shared we had a lot in common musically in the bands that we loved. We loved punk rock, but we also loved Creedence Clearwater Revival, and we loved Slayer as much as we loved Public Enemy, and so it seemed like things were going to work.
So we flip back to Nirvana. It was September 22nd, 1990, and they were playing a gig with Dan Peters as their drummer. And Dave Grohl, who had now flown up to Seattle for an audition with Nirvana, was in the audience for that show. And that would be the one and only show that Dan Peters would play with Nirvana. Although Peters had played well at the gig, it was then 21-year-old Dave Grohl who would have his audition with Nirvana, and the instant Kurt and Chris practiced with him, they knew they had their final drummer.
The first time we set up and jammed, we just blazed through songs, and I sang backup vocals too, which I don't think anyone had done yet, and Kurt was into that, and Chris and I were a badass rhythm section, and Kurt was an amazing songwriter, had a great voice. So when we set up in a room, like a 10 by 10 room, it just sounded like Nirvana. It was it. It was super simple. We blazed through those songs, and I don't know if I really felt like, God, I hope I got the job. I just felt like, well, that sounded pretty good,
So it was just a few short weeks after joining the band that Dave Grohl was playing his first show with Nirvana, barely familiar with the names of the songs, much less the drum parts. But with Grohl, it hardly mattered. As Chris and Kurt had discovered, he was an animal behind the kit. So, Grohl's first show, October 11th, 1990, at Olympia's North Shore Surf Club. The night marked some of the worst technical difficulties of Nirvana's entire history. An electrical malfunction caused the power to blow repeatedly, and the band had to turn off half their amps to avoid further blackouts. Playing with a tiny kit, Grohl's drumming proved too strong, and he hit the drums so hard that he destroyed the snare that night. So Nirvana played 20 songs that night, which included a 5-song encore. with Dave's first song he would play live with the band being a cover that was Son of a Gun, of course, that can be found on Incesticide. Most of the songs being played that night were from Nirvana's debut album Bleach, as you would expect, and we even had 3 in there from their upcoming album Nevermind. That would be Stay Away, Breed, and In Bloom. But Grohl, he was just ferocious behind the drums. The first time he ever practiced with the band, Kurt and Chris just knew straight away, this is the guy. He sang backup vocals too, which is something that Kurt always wanted, so he really was just the whole package. Reflecting back on his time in Nirvana, the Foo Fighters frontman called it the greatest achievement of my life. There would be times when we would really connect, smile and laugh, and feel like a band, and there were times when you felt lost and questioned what you were doing there. Grohl continued, there were times when I had to back off completely and think, I'm just the drummer in this band. And there were other times when we'd all share something really beautiful, like a show or recording, or just a vocal harmony. That's when you really felt like you were part of something great. So, as I release this video, it is October 11th, 2020, which marks 30 years to the day that Dave Grohl played his first ever show with Nirvana. 30 years, pretty significant when you think about it. A lot has happened for Nirvana and Dave Grohl in that time. In that time, of course, Kurt passed away, Nirvana disbanded, Dave Grohl went on to form the Foo Fighters and has enjoyed a lengthy career in that band, achieving enormous success with the Foo Fighters. So thanks to Buzz Osborne from the Melvins, I guess, who put it all together and introduced Dave to Nirvana, made the whole thing happen really. And us fans can be thankful that that did happen, that amalgamation of Dave Grohl coming together with Kurt and Chris, forming Nirvana. With the awesome songs and albums that they made, they were truly a band that changed the face of popular music forever.
Yeah. So, I mean, to me, and honestly, it was my mother that gave me this advice. Where I said, God, Mom, I don't know what to do. I mean, I don't want to leave Pete and Franz. They're like family, but I'm getting asked to join this band up in Seattle, and I've got nothing. What do I do? And she's like, sometimes you just got to do what's best for yourself, you know?